Hey, everybody, and welcome to Think, Engage, Thrive. And tonight we have a great guest, Eric Eden. He's been an entrepreneur for many, many years. CMO. He works with private equity, venture capital firms as a CMO in residence. He's got his own podcast. He's also got a startup trying to basically build a new social network for professionals, similar to we'll talk to him about it, but to sort of superimpose or pick up on the flaws of some of the social media networks that are out there that aren't necessarily working very well for people, especially on the professional level. So he's a great guy. He's his startup is called Workverse, and we'll get into that with him. We'll talk to him about what he's doing, why he's doing it. But he's got a wealth of knowledge for entrepreneurs. He's been through the startup phase with many companies, so his insights are going to be incredible. And we'll talk to him. We'll talk through it. We'll find out a little bit about his background, how he got there, and some of his insights. And again, he's also got a podcast which we'll put in the description of the show. So if anybody wants to check that out, he does it every day, which is a commitment. And he's probably got some great insights on that as well. So we'll talk to him a little bit about what he's doing, and how he's achieving all this. But wealth of knowledge with startups, wealth of knowledge with entrepreneurship, wealth of knowledge with venture capital and private equity. So let's bring him in and let's get started. Eric, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Phil. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
My pleasure. We were talking before about how hot it is on the East Coast. We're both on the East Coast, and it's tremendously hot. I know the West Coast had the weather last week, and it moved across the country, but it's been oppressively hot. At least I think it's oppressively hot.
We're cooking now. We're cooking now for sure.
Yeah. Physically. So why don't you take us through your career journey? You've had some great experiences, some great opportunities. Why don't you take us with that, share some milestones, maybe some turning points in the career that have sort of how it shaped you into a marketing leader over the last 20 some odd years?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been very lucky in my timing because over the last 30 years, I've gotten to be a part of the golden age of technology rising around the world, really. So my first job out of college was during the .com boom, working for the Central Domain Name Registry when the internet was just starting. And there was less than 100,000 .com domain names registered then. And today there's over 350 million. Yeah. So that gives you some context to the journey we've all been on in terms of things going online in the last 30 years. But it was funny during that time in the mid 90s, they were like, we think this internet thing is a fad and it's gonna level off. They kept doing this. It's gonna level off. And I'm like, guys, I don't think so. And it just exploded, and it's been really growing in different ways ever since then. So it's been fascinating to watch all the different developments and technology, and then in marketing that technology over the years. And I've been really thankful that I've gotten to be a part of watching it grow. And I've always gotten to work for private equity backed and venture capital backed companies. So I like working in high growth companies where you're trying to double or triple revenue from the year before every year. It's a really high bar. It's chaos in some ways, but it's amazing in other ways. And that's what gets me out of bed, excited every day to be doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. What are some of the companies you were involved in? What was the first registrar of domains? I remember I still own the first registration, the first domain I registered, which I think was in 1996 or 7, somewhere around there. And I think I did it on register.com, but I'm not positive.
Yeah, so it was just interesting. I worked for the central registry before there was registrars. And then they decided to open it up so it wasn't a monopoly. And
Oh,
I think eventually there was like 30 registrars, but register.com was one of them. I think one of the more famous ones over the years has been GoDaddy,
yeah.
Super Bowl ads, and publicly traded now and worth many billions of dollars. So I think there's been a number of really successful registrars. But my second job out of college, I actually made the progression from working with domain names to working with websites and e-commerce hosting. And around the year 2000, my job was to sell 10,000 e-commerce websites to businesses. And we were calling up businesses. I had a huge sales team of like 100 people, and we were doing marketing, getting them leads. We call people and we say, you should put a website up for your company. And people would be like, my company doesn't need a website. Why would I ever need a website? And we're like, so like you can sell things online and people can buy them with a credit card. And people laughed and laughed. And they're like, oh, that's ridiculous. No one's ever going to buy anything on the internet with a credit card. And so it's just really funny, the experiences I've been a part of. Like that company was public, and got bought for $5.5 billion. So I've just been a part of these like really interesting things where technology has been evolving so much, and it's been fun to be a part of that.
Yeah. That's hysterical. And it's true. I read back, I think back on when Amazon first started, and they struggled. It wasn't all, great from the beginning. They struggled. And I read the story about how Borders Books had a website, but they didn't think, the CEO at the time didn't think that people were ever going to buy books online, not in any kind of scalability. And so he cut a deal with Amazon, and essentially, and he wanted to get the cost of running their website off the balance sheet, right? It was killing him. And so, because they were losing money at it and they weren't really into it, so they gave it essentially to Amazon, which in essence, when you think forward 2 years, killed Borders Books, because essentially you just handed over your entire customer base to Amazon to go and market to sell books faster and cheaper than they can going into the bookstore. So, I mean, there are many other factors that killed Borders, but that was one of the main ones. And I think back on that because people didn't see that was probably 2002, I think, or three. They didn't really see the growth of the internet. Neither did Toys R Us. They cut a deal with Amazon too, and Amazon was running the Toys R Us site essentially. So,
and here we are. Amazon today is half the U.S. economy, like literally. And by the way, it is Amazon Prime Day. Happy Amazon Prime Day, Phil. May your shopping cart always be full.
My daughter sent me a text this morning because she waited. She's up at school and she needed a couple of things, and she said, I'm going to wait till Prime Day. And she sent me a text this morning saying, Happy Prime Day. I said, I didn't realize that was it was a holiday now. She said, it's a buying holiday.
I mean, God bless you, Phil. Happy Amazon Prime Day.
Yeah. Well, for us in our business, it was it's chaotic Prime Day, or leading up to Prime Day. So anyway. So tell us about Workverse. What are you doing with Workverse? I read a little bit about it, but I'm not quite sure.
So let me just start off by saying the problem that I'm trying to solve with my new startup, because social media started around early days of it being around 2007, 2008. So it's been around for about 15 years,
right,
give or take a little bit, right?
Sure.
And I broadly feel that we all deserve better social media after the last 15 years, because 30-40% of the people I know have just given up on it. It's that bad. And when I say it's bad, the things that make it bad is the advertising and the breaches of privacy from people saying like your phone listens to you to show you more advertisements, to really the big problems of spam and fraud and bots just overrunning like all of the social networks. If you look at the social networks, like TikTok is just full of millions of bots, probably most of them China bots.
Yeah.
X, formerly Twitter, is so overwhelmed with bots, you can't even post there with comments because you'll just be attacked by bots commenting weird things in your posts. And LinkedIn, said in the last year they removed 100 million fake people accounts. Like, just try
Yeah.
to wrap your brain around the scale of that, like fraud, phishing, bots, like fakeness. It just makes me like physically ill to think about the scale of it, right?
Yeah.
I haven't talked to anybody who disputes this. It says, look, it's really bad. And that's why I think a third of people or more have just given up on what we have now. And there's been lawsuits around the world against the major social network companies because of largely their breaches with advertising and privacy, right?
Sure.
So my idea was pretty simple, given this mass problem, was let's create a new social network for businesses in particular where there's no advertising, there's no fraud, there's no spam, there's no bots. And if we could start with that as a foundation, I think that that's something a lot of people would say, I'm interested because the other ones are so overrun by those things. But broadly, we want to help people create a great brand for themselves, for their company, and we want to create a marketplace where companies and professionals can come together so that people can be hired to be speakers, people can be hired for board of director, people can be hired for full-time or contract work. And I think that broadly a marketplace for professionals that's fair to both sides, that doesn't have all this fraud, spam, and bots, is what we all really need. And so that's what we've been working for the last year and a half to develop, and we're really excited about it.
It sounds fantastic because I get frustrated with social. I don't I don't spend a lot of time on it personally. For business, yes, but personally, no, because of that. But even as I have a marketing firm, so we place ads, and people want to advertise on the Meta network. People want to advertise on Twitter. They want to advertise on TikTok. And you talked about LinkedIn getting rid of 100 million accounts. Meta got rid of 200 million accounts, and 200 million accounts in one quarter of that were fake. And you see it every day. We start to see in Facebook these, you get these messages from these fake accounts saying, we're Meta and you violated the policies and your account's going to be shut down. Click here and dispute the claim if you think so. And all it is a phishing scam. They want you to click there, and then they're going to get your password and take over your account. And it seems to me that it would be easy for Meta to fix that. It would be easy for LinkedIn to fix the fake account issue. It would be easy for me to, in my small brain, because Amazon, if I want to set up a new Amazon account to be a seller, I have to prove who I am by having my passport or my license. I have to provide that, and I have to take a picture of myself with that license or that passport with them, and it validates it. And I think I don't understand why that can't be done on social media. Why you can't say you're going to validate who you are in order for you to have an account on here.
It can be done, and that's exactly what we're doing. Is to be a user on our system, individuals will have to do that. We'll have to just go through it. It takes 30 seconds.
Right.
So it is pretty easy. The know your customer technology of a government ID and a photo, which is automated 99.9% of the time and works globally, not just for the US. Like, the technology is there to do it. These companies just haven't done it. And the reason they haven't done it is because they're a slave to advertising revenue. And so they just want to inflate the numbers so they can say they have billions of users and they can charge advertisers a lot of money. But so many of those accounts are fake and not real. So if they weren't, like Meta makes over $100 billion a year on advertising, if they didn't have all that ad revenue, they could shift their model. But like, it's pretty hard to walk away from 100 billion a year in revenue in advertising, and all the problems that come with it, right? So it's easier starting from scratch to change the model, and it's very simple. Like, we're just saying, just opt in, just subscribe, and everyone has to be verified. We even verify companies. The technology to verify companies is a bit different, but is also just as quick. Whereas, like, you can go on LinkedIn and create any fake company you want right now,
Sure.
and it's never verified. And then, like, how do you know who to do business with? It's ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Well, Meta there are many advertisers that just don't want to spend any money on Meta anymore because they do know that the fake account problem, and Meta's not, I understand what you're saying. They don't want to walk away from it, but at some point they're going to have to deal with the issue because they are losing revenue from it. I know that we have clients that used to spend many hundreds of thousands of dollars annually on Meta, or in some cases a million or more, and they don't want to do it. They pulled back and said, we'll spend a small amount, and moving that. Of course, everybody right now is enthralled with TikTok, but TikTok, it's not about advertising on TikTok as much as it is about creating good videos and taking advantage of the marketplace. I will say that I am impressed because we do have some clients that are doing great videos and selling substantial amounts of money on the TikTok environment. So advertising on TikTok, it would not be a good thing because you're right. There are so many fake accounts, but they are selling product, which is amazing to me.
Yeah, I think that we just deserve a better social media 2.0 after 15 years. That's sort of my perspective. The
Yeah, I agree.
technology is there to do it, and we should do it and just give ourselves all a better experience. It's exhausting to be targeted with spam and bots and fraud every day. It's like mentally exhausting
Yeah,
for
I
just
agree
about
with
everyone I talk to. Yeah.
Is it live, or is it in beta, or what's the status of it?
It's in beta, so people can go check it out at workverse.com. And we're going to have our full launch here at the end of the month of August, but people can go there and check it out. It's a web app, it's a mobile app, and we're going to be excited to really start pushing it in the end of August. Yeah.
So we could go on and start setting up accounts now?
Yeah, you can download the mobile app and build a profile. And really, what we're going to be doing this fall is bringing on companies who are going to start creating opportunities in the marketplace for hiring speakers, for hiring expert advisors, for hiring board members, for contract and full-time work. I think the other part of the equation is there's some great full-time job sites out there to get jobs, like LinkedIn and Indeed, but there's not a great place for people who are professionally ambitious to take their career to the next level, which includes doing things like being a keynote speaker, getting board seats,
Right.
doing company advisory work. There's so many opportunities like that, but all of those processes today are completely manual, and none of the sites out there are really ideal for matching those people up because they're so overrun with these issues we were just talking about, right?
Yeah, I even find the spam bots on the LinkedIn employment side, where there was one company that was prevalent, but I think LinkedIn finally kicked them off. They were offering you paid them and they would help you get a board seat, but it never, if you looked at the reviews, they never came through. It was just a big fraud. They kept changing their name every 3 or 4 months, and then there were some of the employment advertisers that were just trying to get your resume and get your information and then steal your information and things like that. So, I don't know how much LinkedIn has cracked down on it, but there is a lot of fraud in that side of it too.
Yeah, and so I think that part of the answer is that these systems that were designed for the masses so that they could optimize for increasing advertising revenue that is a model. Like, you can't argue with the fact that they've made a lot of money doing that.
Sure.
However, there's a different model that's probably a much better experience for everybody involved, which is a smaller ecosystem of verified people on both sides who are working with each other for legitimate opportunities, and just get rid of all the inflated stuff and fake stuff, and just deal with the real stuff. I'm okay with like the volume being much lower and just having it be all real. You know what I'm saying, right? I'm like totally okay with that.
Well, would Workverse be worldwide or just United States?
We're starting in the US. It's hard to start globally because you really have to build processes,
Sure.
for each country. And I think the most recent rollout that I've seen where someone tried to do that and had issues was when ChatGPT tried to launch globally, and they immediately sort of had a lot of issues, and they started turning it off in a lot of countries because they didn't do the compliance things by country they needed to do, and then they'll have to go back into those countries. So that's why we decided, like, look, we're just going to start with the US, and then we'll expand as fast as we can to to other countries, because even marketplaces like Upwork, who have built up over the years,
Yeah.
they have an entire division of people that just took the time to build things up so that you can operate in like 100 countries. That
Yeah.
just sort of takes time for legitimate
Sure.
businesses. It even took Amazon a long time to get to be international. I remember for many years, people in Europe couldn't get Amazon. It was a US thing for a lot of years when Bezos was starting it up, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't even until we started working on Amazon in 2006 with skincare. It was when that was the year that Bezos opened up Amazon to more than just books, CDs, music, and movies. They had toys and some other things on there, but they controlled it. But they opened up the marketplace, the seller central side of it, to other brands. And at that point in time, it was just, I think, the US and Canada. And then it was a big deal when he started opening up like Mexico and then the UK and then Germany. And it took a lot of time. They've also, I think, one thing they've been logistically smart about is setting up their own network of shipping so that a small company doing 5 or 10 million in the US can ship globally using Amazon's system. Now it's expensive, and Amazon always gets their cut, but at the same time, I think it was pretty smart of them to be able to do that. So
the world is
yeah.
a very big place. One of my personal hobbies is traveling. I've been to 63 countries.
Wow.
So I love traveling. I love photography. That's actually what my Instagram is about, is my travels around the world.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's amazing. And the world is a big place, but the world is also a little bit smaller. Sometimes because we do business with companies in Israel and Italy and Brazil and Ireland, and it becomes sort of small when you start thinking about it, right? Um, it's a big place physically, but when you start interacting with people, it becomes small. You start to find out that they have the same concerns, the same problems, the same issues that you have here. And I don't know. It just becomes. I love talking to people in other countries. I love it, especially Italy.
The cultures are very different. It's not that they're 100% different, but they're also not only like 5% different. It's more than just language translation or localization.
Yeah,
And the global businesses that I've worked in that are high growth and we're operating in multiple countries around the world, I've found that culturally, the businesses are like often, even in like the UK, Australia, Canada, UAE, countries that are English speaking, have a fair amount of English speaking, it's still like 30 or 40% culturally different how you would need to sell, market, and service
sure.
people globally. And I think people don't quite realize how different things are done around the world. And that's just a very interesting sociological and psychological thing, from my perspective.
Yeah. What types of businesses were you involved in after you spoke about building websites first, being the register for domains? What other types of businesses were you involved with?
So it was a natural progression for me to go from domain names to websites and e-commerce. And then I went into SaaS software. This is around 2005. And I've worked mostly in SaaS software for the most, I've worked mostly in SaaS software for the last 20 years.
Wow.
And essentially, I love it because it's web-based software. And I can't remember the last time I actually had to install software on a computer with like a CD-ROM or a floppy drive or a USB. Like that was a thing for many, many years of my life. And then it wasn't. And so probably one of my most successful companies I worked with was a SaaS company for 10 years in the event management space. So when you like register for a conference, there's SaaS software that powers the conference website. You can pay the conference registration fee. You can register for the conference. And so I worked for a company that made that web-based software available to companies around the world. And we grew that from $5 million a year in annual recurring revenue to over $200 million a year in recurring revenue in the 10 years that I was there. So when I talk about growth, that's what growth looks like. And we grew from 50 people at the company in that time to over 2,000 people in the company. And so that was a really fun journey. During that time, we raised $100 million in private equity. We went public on the New York Stock Exchange. I got to ring the bell to open the New York Stock Exchange. And after being public for a couple of years, the company got taken private for $1.6 billion. So that's essentially the grand slam of what you want to do in technology is you want to be able to grow revenue like that. You want to be able to raise a lot of money so you can grow even more, go public, and then get a huge exit over $1 billion. So that's the grand slam of what people really have tried to do in SaaS software. And I was lucky to get to do that. And, you know, since then I've been helping other SaaS companies try to live that dream. Every company doesn't get to that sort of success, but sometimes you get a lot of situations where companies get, you know, start from nothing and get acquired for a couple $100 million. That's also a really good day. Right. Sure. So that's sort of what I specialize in helping companies do from a chief marketing officer perspective is drive that sort of growth and have those kind of outcomes.
And do you do that as a contract, or you do that through a VC, PE companies? Do they bring you in and say, this company, you know, this is one of our portfolio companies and they need help? Or are the portfolio companies themselves hiring you as a CMO consultant type?
Yeah, all of the above. So I've been a fractional CMO over the last 5 years, and I've worked with a specific venture capital firm based out of Toronto in Canada that invests in US and Canadian companies that are SaaS, fintech companies, payments in that sort of focus area. And it's interesting because they have about 40 portfolio companies. And as those portfolio companies need help, I'll jump in and help them on behalf of the VC firm. Sometimes I work with some of the portfolio companies on specific projects, even more focused and directly. And what's fascinating about that is that it's early stage Series A investment. And often when companies are at the early stage and they don't have a lot of resources, that's when the best marketing needs to happen. The most creative, the best stuff needs to happen because you don't have like $100 million to just slosh around and give it the old college try. You gotta be smart. You gotta be guerrilla. You gotta be really methodical about making every dollar count. And so I like working at that end of the spectrum, as well as I've gotten to work for some later stage companies, like I mentioned, where we got a lot of funding and we could do some really interesting things at scale. So I like working on all sides of the spectrum. It's sort of a different challenge, just to note, but all of it's fun.
Yeah. You're 100% right. Early stage. And I went through it with some of the startups that I either founded or was involved in, when you have no money, you have no choice but to be scrappy and creative and come up with some ways to get your brand out there. And in a lot of ways, it is more fun and more exciting than when you do have money, because I think when you do have money to spend, you tend to think differently about what you're doing. You tend to go for bigger. Everybody wants to do the big Super Bowl commercial, which isn't always the best thing.
Yeah, I think it's comes down to only 1 in 100,000 companies have high growth success.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a stat that 80% of small businesses go out of business within 5 years. That it gives you an idea of how tough it is. But even beyond that, a lot of businesses sort of get to a certain level and then they plateau. They just can't go much further because of their business model. So like a lot of companies, that's like $1 million or $10 million a year. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like there's nothing wrong with people who want that as an outcome. It's just a different strategy. But companies who can go to over $100 million in revenue, that's like 1 in 100,000. And it's just helpful to have that reference to know how hard it is, how creative you have to be.
No question. But and it's also, like you said, some companies or some founders just don't want to get there. We've had a lot of founders on this show over the last 2 years that have said they wanted to build a lifestyle business. They just wanted to get it to a point where it's profitable, where they're growing, but they don't want to raise private equity money. They don't want to get on a high growth path. They want to be able to control their own destiny and essentially build a lifestyle company where they can do what they want to do. The company's profitable. They've got great people that they've employed, and that it's a different mindset and a different strategy. It's just slower growth, but there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, I think lifestyle businesses are great. It's just a matter of what people want. And people should do what they want. They shouldn't do what other people want them to do. So, I think I have a lot of friends. I live here in Washington, D.C. I have a lot of friends who work for the government. They're like, look, I don't want to make a lot of money. I just want to work 9 to 5. I just want to be able to pay my bills. And I want to have that balance of not working nights and weekends. And they're like, I'm comfortable with the slow pace and working in government. And I'm like, cool. If that's what makes you happy, then you should do that.
Yeah.
But for me, that would drive me nuts because I'm a very ambitious, driven guy who it just really likes growth and likes the challenge of high growth. And so it's just a matter of what people want. People with different strokes, right?
Oh, no question. I'm with you. I could never do it. I would never be good at a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 job and be satisfied, because I've always got something going on, and there's always something that I want to do or something that I want to see or something that I want to learn, and which is why I actually never started out to build an agency. I never did. It was something that we fell into at the behest of a former partner that we had when I built a shaving company a couple of years ago, well, many years ago, and of the second largest razor manufacturer in the world, which is US based. They were our partners in it. They provided the razor, we provided the skincare, and we did all that. But after we sold, they came to me and said, we have no direct to consumer business. Everything we do is to supermarkets, drugs, club stores, and super centers. We do some private label to some of these guys as well, but we have national brands. We don't do anything direct to consumer. We don't understand how Amazon works direct to consumer. We don't have websites that are direct to consumer, e-commerce sites, and we have 50 different brands because they weren't just in the shaving business. And so they asked us to help them start to build some direct to consumer websites and get them on Amazon as a seller, which we did. And that was sort of how we started the business, and actually it was my wife who basically pointed it out to me, because after we had sold and I started doing this, we were having coffee one morning. She said, "What are you doing?" And I explained that I said, it's sort of in this world of, I'm almost consulting, but we're actually doing the work. So I said, I don't know how long it's going to last. And she said, it sounds like you have a company there. I think you have to focus on it and build some structure around it. And then it dawned on me. I was like, she's not wrong. And that was how we built an agency. And the thing I like about what we do now is every day is totally different, and we have to deal with a totally different set of products and problems, because we can go from having to market food to having to market, services, to having to market SaaS products, to having to market, all these different things. And it gets very exciting at sometimes. So
It's an interesting story. Is one of my best friends here in the DC area. He's a chief technology officer, and he got a job working. Came from the commercial sector, is a very successful CTO, and he got a job at the Department of Justice doing a big technology project. And he went in there and he was excited, and they showed him the project plan. And he's like, I think there's a mistake with this project plan. You said this was a 6-year contract, and the work here is there's only 6 months of work here. And they're like, no, it's 6 years of work. And so they're like, don't ever say that again. And so he came into work every day, and he would like read the newspaper for an hour, and then he'd surf the web, and then he'd do 15 minutes of work, and then he'd go to lunch, and then he'd come back from lunch, and he'd like watch a movie for an hour, do 15 minutes of work. And like he did like an hour of work a day, because what else could you do? They were mad at him if he worked too hard, and he ruined what they had set up. And so that's, for some people, that was okay. That would drive me absolutely bananas, even if I was making money to cover my bills. Like, I would just personally, from a development perspective, wouldn't be good with like a pace like that. Whereas I contrasted to this one lady who worked for me at one of the tech companies. She came to me. I really enjoyed working with her, and I was very disappointed because she said, I can't work for you anymore. And I said, why? What's wrong? What did I do?
Yeah.
She said, you are a purveyor of chaos.
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, every day you have new ideas. You're like, let's try this. Let's do that. I try to say, like, let's plan it out. And you're like, let's just do it now. So, I think people need to work in the zone that they're comfortable with. And, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, I agree with you. So throughout all this, the last 20 some odd years, what are some of the growth strategies that you've employed to get high growth? Or maybe it's something that, you can talk about in sort of the abstract and not get into too many specifics, but unless you want to.
I think I would just say that one of the biggest things, I came up through the demand generation side of marketing. So there's a lot of different areas of marketing. It's very broad when it comes down to it. I came up through the demand generation, and all the places where I've had success, it's not that demand generation is 100% of the focus, but it should probably be a super majority of the focus. So like 70, 80, 90%. And it's okay to do other things that add value, like branding and awareness activities, like PR is a good one. But I think where people have not achieved growth is when they flip that ratio and you try to make 80% of the marketing about things like PR, because it doesn't generate sales, it doesn't generate cash, and then you don't have the ability to build on things. So I think having the right ratio of marketing activity and sales activity is important in terms of generate demand, generate cash flow, that enables you to test a lot of other things. And so that's, I would think, the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that the actual strategies for generating demand, those have continued to evolve a lot over the last 20 years. As you go along, certain channels have sort of more elasticity or ability to grow. And some today are under a lot of pressure and don't really work as well anymore at all. And I'll give just a couple examples. And I think that's just important because what worked 5 years ago is not really working very well today.
Sure.
And that's a very interesting thing. Like if someone got in a time machine and came here from 5 years ago, they'd be like, what happened? Right?
Yeah.
So like, I'll give you an example. Outbound email marketing.
Yeah.
where people have not opted in. I I build massive businesses based on that.
Yep.
It's not illegal. It's best practice to get people to opt in. That's fine. But like, sending a lot of emails to people in B2B and making them a interesting offer, not doing any fraud or any scam like that, but just legitimate emails, but people are not opted in. That used to be a great channel. It scaled, it was cost effective. I made so many millions of dollars via that channel. But today, the reality is Google, Yahoo, Microsoft have gotten so good that unless people have opted into your emails, they claim they block 99.7% of those emails.
I think that that's part of it. And I would say that I agree 100% with you, because what we were doing 5 years ago or 6 years ago, we can't do today. It doesn't work. And we were doing a tremendous amount of outreach emails, not just for clients, but for ourselves. And it doesn't work. And it stopped working around COVID. But I agree with you that, Microsoft and Google have really clamped down, but I also think that the receiver has become numb to it, because there's
True.
been so much that it just doesn't behave the same way, and it doesn't work. I don't care how good the offer is. It's just, and I personally, I wake up every morning, I probably get 50 or 60 emails of people pitching me for things, and I don't pay attention to any of them, and I've become numb to it, in the same way that I've become numb to scammers. I just and I think that that's more of the problem, because too many bad marketers, I don't, whether they're spammy or whether they're, phishing schemes or whatever, have gotten their hands on automation and blasted it out, and it's sort of destroyed, um, the results. And I think that's especially true with text marketing. So
Yeah, I think one really fun story just to illustrate this is that, you know, over 15 years ago, I was with this company and we were sending out, to give you an idea of volume, 25 million emails a year where people had not opted in. But we were offering them was we're saying, hey, we're coming to your city. We're going to be doing a series of lunches in the next week at upscale restaurants. Come have steak with us for lunch, no cost. It's networking and education. And from sending those 25 million emails a year, we would get 40, 50,000 people to attend small group lunches
yeah,
of 50 people at a time. And
yeah,
we did like 1,000 of them a year of those lunches. And you can't do that today, because even if you're offering a free steak lunch worth $100, people are like, yeah, I get a lot of email. This
yeah,
feels like fraud. And so that's just one example of strategies from 5, 10 years ago that just don't work anymore. Another is like SEO and content marketing. Like it used to be like write 3 blogs a week and you can get indexed in Google. And now with like AI summaries and video and local search being at the top, like the organic traffic from doing, like, for example, blog content that was very popular 5, 10 years ago,
yeah.
you can still get traffic, but it's dramatically less than it was 5 to 10 years ago. So you had to rethink, does it really make sense to publish 1,000 blog posts? Like I work for one company where we did that. We published 1,000 blog posts in the industry we're in, and we were getting 250,000 website visitors a month just from those blogs. And that was like a third of our business came from that.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't happen today. So like I give these examples to say, not that either one of them are like absolute or comprehensive. It's more just that across every channel, things are changing, and there's new channels like podcasts and YouTube that are
Yeah.
exploding, which are probably the way for people to grow today, but it's a completely different motion, completely different.
I think it's a little, I think that it's become, you have to be more authentic, even with LinkedIn. I People that have gotten their hands on automation to do some things on LinkedIn, they don't understand what they're doing, and they wind up blowing the opportunity, because if you're going to outreach on LinkedIn, You don't want to just send somebody something and say, hey, this is Phil and I've got this marketing firm and I can save you money and I'll do your ads on Amazon for $500 a month and I use an AI product and it's great. People just turn off to that. And so you have to take it a little bit slower and do 4, 5, 6 outreach touch points before you can actually talk to them about, their business. And I think the same way, even on, with podcasts and YouTube, it becomes an authentic piece because they get to interact with you from viewing it, and they get to hear what you're all about, and they see that you're authentic, and then maybe you can move forward. So you're right. The channels that don't work anymore are sort of shutting down, but new channels are opening up, and I see it with TikTok, and it amazes me. I hate to keep bringing it up, but my world is consumer products. We do a bit of SaaS things like that, but my biggest world is consumer products. I've been a consumer product marketer forever, and it amazes me. We have a client that's doing almost $200,000 a month selling hats on TikTok and customized hats. And it's amazing to me because their cost of marketing on that is the cost of producing the videos every day, which is what they're doing. And I'm in a group with Amazon experts, and there was a guy on there who's basically saying, he has a beauty line, does tremendously well. He's been doing it for years, north of 20 million a year. And he's talking about getting off of Amazon completely. He'll have his products listed there, but he's not going to do any advertising or marketing on it anymore. He's moving everything over to TikTok. And he's got this system where he needs X number of pieces of content, video content every day from various people, and he knows what those costs are. And that's what he spends his money on. He gets all these young women to make content for him, and he's constantly got content going, and he's doing, 2, 3, 4 million a month. It's amazing.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So I think people just have to be curious about, okay, what is working now? What is working going forward? Not just relying on what worked in the past. And if you can emotionally get there, there's still a lot of success to be had today.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that there's more, you have to be a little bit more creative today, which I like. You have to think a little bit differently. But you're right about blog posts, man. And I think AI is sort of killing that because there's so many people out there just banging out content with AI that is just second rate. Even on the social media channels with video, they've got all these automation tools pumping out short form videos on YouTube Shorts and Reels and TikTok and Facebook, and it's just becoming, boring.
The war of the clones has begun. When I see like on LinkedIn, posts from bots and then bots commenting on the bots post, that's when like that it's gone too far.
Yeah.
Is the bots are just having conversations with the bots and we're watching them conversate with each other. It's like when my kids watch other people playing video games on YouTube. I'm like, what are you doing?
I know, that's amazing to me. Twitch, they'll sit there and watch other people playing. There was a guy who was a wide receiver or so for the Pittsburgh Steelers who had this channel on, I think it was Twitch, and he would get 100,000 kids viewing his channel to watch him play video games. It was amazing.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
So I like paying attention to that stuff. Especially from a consumer, just to watch how consumers react to things. But you're right. Things are not working the same as they were. And what do you see as some of the remarkable marketing things that you've done or you see coming down the pipe that you think are interesting?
Yeah, so it's interesting with my podcast, remarkablemarketing.io. I do daily episodes and I interview marketers and I say, tell me about the best marketing you've ever done in recent times. And the idea is that 99% of the marketing out there is pretty bad, right? And so let's celebrate the top 1% of what people are doing that's really great. And that inspires people. It inspires me. And so I love talking to other marketing executives and leaders and saying, hey, what are you doing that's really working, that's really cutting edge? And I would say marketing is a broad area. There's people who are doing really creative things all the time that every day makes me go, wow, that's cool. Like I should think about that. Like, how do I think about that? Like, it's everything from like, how do you get 500,000 subscribers to your YouTube channel to, how do you get $700 million from one influencer campaign? And so talking to people and having them share these stories of what they did, how they did it, why it was hard, is something that I really enjoy doing every day because I'm a naturally curious, ambitious person.
Yeah.
And I think that when I've gone to in-person conferences and I ask people like, oh, what are you doing that's really great? Like that's where I've gotten my best inspiration. I try to do it in like really short 15-minute episodes. And so I think that the answer to your question is there's tons of great stuff that people are doing that's really creative that I never would have thought of and that ChatGPT would not have thought of.
Yeah.
So I mean, there is hope that great marketing is out there without AI.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, despite the fact that channels are evolving, like we were talking about, and things are not as easy as they were, I think there is hope that, hey, there's ways to take it forward. You just have to be curious, want to learn, want to experiment. And, that's the message I take forward with people.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. I'll tell you real quick, my remarkable marketing story of what I did once. I said before, we were in the shaving business, and this was years ago, and we were doing all the things we were supposed to do to start, and we just weren't getting what we needed out of it. We were marketing, we were doing advertising, we were doing all kinds of things. We had Michael Phelps was involved in the company, John Scully was involved in the company, so we had all this stuff to talk about, and it just wasn't happening. And I was getting frustrated. I woke up one morning. I'm a sports fan, and I was reading, the news, and I saw that Brian Wilson, who was a pitcher for the San Francisco Giants, got traded to the Dodgers, and he was going to pitch for the first time in a year. And he had Tommy John surgery, but the guy had an epic beard. He was known for it. MLB hated it at the time because they didn't want it on there, but he was sort of a rebel. And I got up and I contacted his people, and I said, I'll give him $1 million to shave with our razor. And that's all I needed was them to respond back and say, we'll run it by Brian. And once they gave me that, I gave it to the PR firm, and then we just blasted it out everywhere. And we got out. People were outraged. They were so angry at us that we would offer a millionaire $1 million to shave. And they were sending us all these pictures on social media of all their body parts that they would shave with a price tag on it, and then, but all the sports channels were interviewing us for a week everywhere, all around the world, Japan, France, everybody. They were asking, who we were and why we were offering $1 million and how could we do that? We're a startup and blah, blah, blah. And they were just curious about it. What they didn't realize was it was just a stunt. And I knew he was never going to take the money, and I knew we were never have to pay it. And so after about 10 days, 15 days, it sort of died down. And TMZ caught Brian Wilson coming out of a gym in California. And then they asked him, you're going to shave your beard? And he said, no, I'm not shaving my beard for any amount of money. So that just blew up again, because then people were outraged that he wouldn't take the $1 million. And so, but the point was that wound up launching us, because we got, tens of thousands of orders out of that. And that really set us going. That was sort of the launch, so it took us about 1.5 years of doing the normal blocking and tackling, and we weren't getting anywhere. And that overnight just sort of pushed us into where we needed to be. So that's
a really freaking fantastic story. I mean, just brilliant from a guerrilla perspective, because you knew you weren't going to have to spend $1 million, and you just got all of that media and all of those impressions, and it really captured people's imagination, and it drove that great result. And it ultimately was pretty easy to execute once you got that one email saying, we'll run it by him. Like, that's right. All you needed to say. It was incredible. Amazing.
Exactly. It didn't really cost us much. Oh,
But it's
geez.
also just great proof that, even in a business like shaving, which a lot of people would consider, well, how can you do something fun and creative with shaving? Obviously, you found something, but there's other examples in that area too, like that video with the $1 million shave
Oh,
club
the
that was
Dollar
so
Shave Club. Yeah.
hysterical.
Yeah.
And then another example that I'm a fan of is Manscaped.
Oh, yeah.
And the funniest thing that Manscaped did was just how they did such great creative and advertising copy for it. It's like they had copy that was like, um, when you trim the bush, the tree
Yeah.
stands tall.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that's fantastic. Like more of that, please. Right? I mean, just
Yeah.
like there isn't enough of that in marketing today. So
No, they did I think they do a great job. Well, Brian, Eric, I hate to. I said Brian. I was thinking Brian Wilson. Eric, I hate to cut us short, but we're actually a little bit over time. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I'm glad you were able to come on. How can people get in touch with you? Obviously, you want them to go to Workverse. Where's your podcast? Is Remarkable Marketing?
remarkablemarketing.io on the web, or wherever you get your podcast is there too. But that's the main site for it. And you can link to me. You can get in touch with me via LinkedIn as well. Just don't spam me. Don't try to commit fraud against me. But workverse.com, remarkablemarketing.io, or as a last resort, LinkedIn.
Thanks. I really appreciate you being on. I enjoyed the discussion. We gotta cut it short, folks. Next week we've got a great young woman who started an organic natural bar business. We're gonna get a chance to talk to her about. She's had some struggles, so it'll be interesting to listen to what she's done to overcome those. And until then, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next week.